from making those nuclear weapons, cause thousands of people have died by your hands. You never get any peace. I know, just can't get no matter how you try. You live until you die, you just can't get no peace.
Tendai Mwadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, Kudzai Mudzimu Mukuru. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power for all African people. One God, one aim, one destiny. Greetings and welcome, family, to another session live on gotkushTV. A lot is happening in the world, and we have to make sure that we're bringing you the the good information and analysis that we require as African people from a Pan-Africanist, a universal African nationalist, that is to say, Garveyite position. Hoping ones and ones can hear me good and clearly. And if you can, please hit the like button as you come through the session today. Yes, indeed. Hit the like button and share the link far and wide. Make the people them know, say, gotkushTV is live right now, engaging some important conversations around current issues. Yes, indeed, kings and queens, we're there. And you know, yesterday we came live just to what's the word, anti-eulogize the passing, the death of a demon into the realm of demons, you know what I'm saying, and provide some information on his exploits in the African world. And so we hope ones and ones were dutifully informed and inspired to go and do further research on said exploits. For those who were not there, we delved into the history of one Henry Kissinger, particularly in Angola, the nation of Angola in Central Africa, as well as how that related to his relationship with South Africa, the nation of South Africa, which was then under the brutal rulership of the Anglo Boers in a system known as apartheid, which is and was just another form, a particular form of Western imperialism and colonialism as it stood right up until the 1990s. Today, we're going to do something little different. We're going to expand on that foundation that we have laid in relation to the specificity of the African world and look at the issue of Henry Kissinger in the context of war crimes and why he was never charged with war crimes. As we said yesterday, brothers and sisters, when a man like this passes into the realm of demons, it is important for us to contextualize his life, not just as an individual man, but as an individual man who stood as a primary member and mover and shaker within the global Western imperialist white supremacist power structure. Yes, Henry Kissinger is nobody if he is not foreign policy advisor, Secretary of State, and well-noted consultant of the elite in America and the Western world. And so we must analyze this individual and his life and his legacy within the context of the people and the geopolitical interests that he represents. And within that context, what we are in fact doing is developing a proper understanding of power, political power, economic power, social power, and how it actually works in today's world. Because his exploits as an individual are not very much a secret. Much of his exploits are a part of the public record, yet he was never brought to task, never charged, and never convicted of anything. Yeah, and so when we see that dynamic, there are words, and there are signs, and there are symbols that enable us to discern what that means to us as African people forwarding a liberatory agenda in today's world. Now, somebody is asking the question, how we know, say we tackle the show, why aren't white men ever charged with war crimes? I'm going to use the word ever, yes, and I admit to engaging in some slight exaggeration and hyperbole in my usage of this terminology, because somebody out there is saying to themselves right now, well, oh, ShakaRa, oh, you ignore the Nuremberg trials. Yeah? The Nuremberg trials. All right? And I accept that the Nuremberg trials might be said, and I'm using the word might be said, to be an exception to this rule. And if it is an exception, it's the exception that proves the rule. But I'm going to tell you why and engage some of the permutations of why this statement might still be true. First and foremost, if we are talking in relation to the International Criminal Court, the ICC, yeah, this statement is more or less true. I believe that of all the people that have been charged, if any, or even brought to the ICC, only one of them has not been an African, literally an African from the continent of Mama Africa. Yes, and all of those who have actually been convicted of something have been Africans, maybe with the exception of one individual who comes from Eastern Europe. Yeah, the Nuremberg trials took place in the aftermath of mass European War II, misnomered World War II, to bring to justice the Germans who were classified as Nazis and perpetrated crimes against the Jewish people and the rest of Europe in general. Yes, the rest of Europe in general. And so if this is the exception to the rule that proves the rule, it would stand to reason, by virtue of this example, that white men are not charged with war crimes unless those war crimes are committed against other white people, and not just other white people, but other white people who represent the geopolitical West. Yeah? So an Eastern European might get it. A Russian might get it. It just so happens that some of the crimes that the Nazis committed were in fact against some Eastern Europeans, like Russia. Russia, who lost as a result of an attempted invasion by Germany and Russia's subsequent engagement in the war, lost somewhere in the region of 20 odd million lives fighting Nazi Germany. Yeah, in mass European War II. All right. And so, but when you hear the narrative of mass European War II, you be forgiven for not knowing that. You'll be forgiven for not knowing that Russia was in fact a part of the quote unquote Allied forces that defeated Germany within that particular conflict. However, there's some very serious caveats that we have to apply to that particular analysis. Yeah. And that is the fact that not only did a number of Nazis, leading Nazis, stand trial and were convicted of crimes, yes, against humanity, war crimes, and other movements. Yeah. By the way, that this Nuremberg trial existed long before the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court was founded in 2002. Okay. Prior to this, they would institute a number, I think in the 1950s, such a body as the International Criminal Court was suggested within the auspices of the United Nations, but it was never actually implemented until 2002. And prior to that, they would just set up, random courts to deal with specific issues as and when it would apply. But we have to remember the context for these things. Mass European War II was a war fought by white people in the interest of white people, by European nations in the interest of European nations. And whilst they claim to have been fighting for democracy and justice around the world, most of these nations were failing. All of these nations were failing to apply those principles to the African citizens within their national borders and the African citizens of the nations that they were at that time colonizing. And so when we see the development of the United Nations and international law in that regard, we have to be aware as African people that the colonizers who developed these structures, these laws, and these institutions did not intend for it to apply to us as African people. We have to understand that. Yeah? That's for always done that. And then, even within the context of bringing Nazi war criminals to book, America in particular was able to extract the benefits of having defeated Germany, not just through war booty, so to speak, but through granting, effectively, Nazi war criminals who were known to be scientists in Germany, effectively amnesty if they were prepared to utilize their scientific brilliance on behalf of American empire. Research I think called Operation Paperclip. Yes, where Americans, the American government, enlisted the services of known Nazi war criminals because they would be effective against their new enemy, which was now Soviet Russia, entering the Cold War period. Russia also took a few of the scientists, but made to understand that, you know, in the battle for those scientists, America won the battle. Yeah. These scientists became very prominent players in American government and American corporations, American institutions of research, as high up as NASA. Yes. There's a man by the name of von Braun, yeah, who was in fact the head of NASA and assisted the American government in winning the space race against the USSR, Soviet Russia. Yes. And he was a known leading member of the Nazi party. He wasn't the only one. Some of these men who were escaped Nazi Germany, yeah, found themselves in other places in South and Central America, and there's a long history of their involvement in certain regimes that we're not going to go into that too much. But some of those Nazis that you find in the South and Central America, some of them began in America, being protected by the American government. At least one of them was found out to be a Nazi and escaped, went to Argentina. Yeah. So it seems that there's even for white war criminals, yeah, as long as they're prepared to reform themselves in the service of white Western empire, white supremacist empire, there is legitimacy for them, kings and queens. All right. So we see there's some contradictions here. So when I say, why aren't white men ever charged with war crimes? We see, even in the biggest instance of white men being charged with war crimes, there are some significant contradictions. I want to understand that. But, brothers and sisters, our conversation today has been inspired by the death of a demon by the name of Henry Kissinger. And so what we're going to do today is explore this war criminal record through the perspective of a lawyer. Yes, from a specific legal perspective. And we recognize, as I've said already, that what is referred to as international law was not designed for and in the interest of African people, but it's useful to analyze the war criminal within the context of the standards that the war criminal has set for the rest of the world. The International Criminal Court is an associate of the United Nations, an institution that was, to a significant degree, established by America, its government, its think tanks, and its corporations to be a proxy for American interest. And they pick, choose, and refuse the extent to which they sign up to the dictates of institutions like the United Nations, institutions like the International Criminal Court. When it suits them, they're all involved. Key example of this, they are currently trying to charge Vladimir Putin for war crimes. But the United States itself is not under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court and therefore is not subject to its dictates. So they will use that court in their own interest as long as that same institution cannot be used against them. Israel, same thing. All right. And so there was an interesting article that I came across, that we're going to read through. All right. And I'm going to bring it up on the screen right here now. Yeah, I'm going to bring it up on the screen right here now. And we're going to explore this thing. So there's a piece, it's called, Is Henry Kissinger a War Criminal? Now, the obvious answer is yes. Yeah. But we have to explore some things. The article is written by a man by the name of Reed Brody, who is a member of an institution called the International Commission of Jurists, which is a group of legal professionals who specialize in international law, to cut a long story short, So they're dealing with things like human rights, war crimes, and things of that nature, okay? And the extent to which developing frameworks and institutions and ways to apply international legality, all right, and that them depend, and so again, there are limitations, we must understand the limitations to institutions like these, and that none of them are Pan-African and none of them operate ultimately in the interest of African people. But as I've said, it's interesting to analyze the war criminal according to the standard that the war criminal has set for the rest of the world. Is Henry Kissinger a war criminal? Article reads, Henry Kissinger, who served as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State under Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, turned 100 years old on May 27th. By the way, this article was published on June 27th, 2023. The birthday was celebrated. Listen to this now. The birthday was celebrated by the establishment elites in op-eds, interviews, phoning Ted Koppel's CBS piece, a closed-door gathering at the Economic Club of New York. Why is a former government official who was at this time head of a private geopolitical institution known as Kissinger Associates being celebrated privately by the Economic Club of New York? What is the relationship between the government institutions and the corporate and economic institutions of this nation that make, this interesting confluence of praise possible? That is the question we have to ask ourselves, kings and queens, brothers and sisters. Let's see. A closed-door gathering at the Economic Club of New York and a secret black tie event at the New York Public Library, where guests seen walking in constituted an A-list of corporate and political biggies. Corporate and political biggies. Not the smallies, them kings and queens. The biggies. Many, of course, including The Nation, The Intercept, and Mehdi Hassan, used the occasion to record the dark side of Kissinger's legacy, his role in the destruction of the Chilean democracy and the consolidation of Pinochet dictatorship. We spoke about that dynamic a few shows ago on ZIVANAYI. To cut a long story short, 1973, 50 years ago, the American government was involved in the overthrow of a democratically elected Allende in Chile, yes, and so they supported his overthrow because he was on the socialist side of things, despite the fact that he was democratically elected, and supported a dictator in his place, yes, and backed that dictator right up until the end of his premiership. All right, the atrocities of the Argentine military junta. Kissinger told the country's foreign minister, if there are things that have to be done, you should do them quickly. So Kissinger was also involved in war crimes in Argentina. The prolonging of the Vietnam War through the sabotage of Lyndon Johnson's 1968 peace talks, the Indonesian invasion and subsequent rape of East Timor. I'm not stop to going at all them things, you know, but note these things down. And if you want to do further research, do that. The Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974, the betrayal of the Iraqi Kurds, the extension of the Vietnam War to Laos and Cambodia. Now, this particular act, especially in Cambodia, is probably the act that has the name of Henry Kissinger in most infamy, at least as far as the public record is concerned. Yeah, and we'll explain exactly what he did a little bit later on in the article. And the Pakistani army's atrocities in East Pakistan, which is now called Bangladesh. Quite an impressive record for one man, even a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. Henry Kissinger, among many other accolades, is actually a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. This is in the 1970s, after the Cambodian thing and all them kind of thing there, yeah. And he was given this prize for brokering peace with Vietnam. And the man, his counterpart in Vietnam, whose name I am forgetting, it's just gone up my head, yeah, refused to accept the award with Kissinger because him not accept no award for no peace with no war criminal around ya. All right. So this is so not only are war criminals, yeah, white men who are war criminals not brought to justice, they are rewarded for their acts of criminality. The epithet most frequently hurled at Kissinger is war criminal. The celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain famously wrote, "Once you've been to Cambodia, you will never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. And you'll never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic." So, is Henry Kissinger a war criminal? It's difficult not to confuse political, moral, historical responsibility for great human suffering with criminal liability. But it's one thing to say Henry Kissinger's policies led to hundreds of thousands, probably millions of deaths. It's another to say that in a strict legal sense, he may be responsible for those deaths. There is a way to make a case using traditional international criminal law principles, yeah? And that paragraph is the reason why this article has been selected. Yes, that piece is the reason, that paragraph is the reason why this article has been selected, because we're going to explore this thing from the specific perspective of what them call outer national law in a Z. All right. And so let's get into this thing, yeah, and we're going to expose the hypocrisy of the West in this regard. All right. Oh, everybody can see the thing. I've just larged up the reading so people can follow me if they want to follow me. All right. So is Henry Kissinger a war criminal? Sorry, I've read that part already. Right. So let's begin in Cambodia. What was Henry Kissinger responsible for in Cambodia? Cambodia is indeed the most obvious example, Did Kissinger order unlawful acts in the bombing of that country? By the early 1970s, a rule requiring that attempts be made to spare civilians was firmly entrenched as a norm of customary international law, based on the concepts of distinction between military and civilian targets and of proportionality, which had been elaborated in international conventions. United Nations General Assembly resolutions, such as Resolution 2444 in 1969, reaffirming the duty to distinguish between civilians and military targets. That same resolution is the one that has people questioning the actions of Israel at this moment in time. US military law and other efforts to codify the customary norms of humanitarian law, additional protocol 1 of Geneva Convention, which is the Geneva Convention, is the convention that deals with legality and rules as specifically related to war. Yes, the conditions of war, which came into force in 1977, codified in treaty form many of these customary international legal principles. In a war that Kissinger and Nixon treated as a, quote, sideshow to Vietnam, the United States destroyed Cambodia's neutrality. So Cambodia, when I say Cambodia's neutrality, Cambodia had nothing to do with the Vietnam War. They had no side. They had no allegiance. They were not involved in the thing. Yes? The United States destroyed Cambodia's neutrality and overthrew. Sorry, 1 second. I lose my place. Look a piece. Look a while ago. And overthrew its government in an attempt to deny the North Vietnamese sanctuaries and supply lines. But by December 1970, an intense bombing campaign, which already caused massive civilian casualties, and a joint US South Vietnam ground invasion had failed to root out the Vietnamese communists who were in North Vietnam. And Nixon now wanted to covertly escalate the air attacks. Nixon called Kissinger and told him, quote, I want a plan where every goddamn thing that can fly goes into Cambodia and hits every target that is open. Crack the hell out of them. 5 minutes later, Kissinger called Alexander Haig, then his military assistant, to relay the orders. Quote, he wants a massive bombing campaign in Cambodia. He doesn't want to hear anything. It's an order. It's to be done. Anything that flies on anything that moves. You got that? Unquote. Pentagon records show that compared with November 1970, the number of sorties by US gunships and bombers in Cambodia had tripled by the end of December. Kissinger's order to strike anything that moves would appear to call for committing war crimes by ignoring the distinction between military and civilian targets. Although Kissinger, as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, was not in the defense chain of command, there is substantial evidence from the principal's memoirs, including Kissinger's, quote, we worked out the guidelines for the bombing of the enemy's sanctuaries. That's the direct quote from Kissinger himself. Yes, so he has admitted his culpability in organizing this bombing campaign of Cambodia, even though it was not a military player in this conflict. That Kissinger was involved in target selection and was, quote, reading the raw intelligence. Ray Sitton, a colonel, serving the Joint Chiefs of Staff would bring a list of targets to Kissinger for approval. Strike here in this area, Kissinger would tell him. And Sitton would back channel the coordinates into the field, circumventing the military chain of command. And that was done because this was a secret operation for a good 5 years when they were bombing Cambodia. It was not on the official record. At least 100,000 Cambodian civilians were killed in the bombings. It's actually significantly more than that. These were not all of Kissinger's watch, but a recent Intercept investigation, including on-the-ground interviews with survivors and formally classified U.S. Military documents from a secret Pentagon task force that investigated war crimes during the 1970s, offers previously unpublished evidence of civilian deaths and shows how he bears responsibility for more violence than previously reported. So that Intercept investigation is actually in the description to the video. Yeah, you can check the link to the Intercept series of articles in the description to this video if you want more information. The records show that U.S. troops implicated in killing civilians received no meaningful punishment. The records show that U.S. troops implicated in killing civilians received no meaningful punishment. The records show that U.S. troops implicated in killing civilians received no meaningful punishment. Ultimately, the U.S. bombings drove ordinary Cambodians into the arms of the Khmer Rouge, who will take over the country and carry out one of the worst mass atrocities in history. The Khmer Rouge is estimated to have killed upwards of 2 million people. Yes, during its reign. I'm not an expert on the Khmer Rouge, but they were a dictatorship of a communist persuasion, if I'm not mistaken. And basically, they were brought to power because of the mass destabilization that was caused by this constant bombing. The people of Cambodia never even knew why they were being bombed. Yes, and if you look online now, especially since that Intercept article, you'll be able to see documentaries and interviews with people in Cambodia and with journalists who have done the report in the Intercept, and their conversations with people in Cambodia who recall what was taking place at this time. The people them never even know Wagwan. Yeah, and so that level of destabilization and so on and so forth brought into being this regime called the Khmer Rouge. And we're going to come back to the Khmer Rouge in a little piece, because in the context of our conversation today, what happened to them and their leadership is instructive. Let's move on. So we just dealt with Cambodia, and it would seem that from the legal standard, it is legitimate to suggest that Henry Kissinger is a war criminal based upon his actions, yes, in Cambodia. We're going to move on now to Pakistan / Bangladesh. By the way, family, before we move on, just bear in mind, housekeeping, as you come through, like up the video, share the link far and wide. Like up the video, share the link far and wide. We're just engaging in an analysis using the standard that has been set by the war criminals to analyze why these war criminals have not been brought to justice based upon the standard that they have set and imposed on the rest of the world. And I hope ones and ones are appreciating the information so far. We are reading from an article entitled, Is Henry Kissinger a War Criminal? By a lawyer, an international jurist, called Reed Brody. Reed Brody is a member of the International Commission of Jurists, and they're a conglomeration of lawyers who deal with things like international law, war crimes, human rights law, etc., etc., etc. Okay? And so we recognize that these institutions, as we've already established, were not set up in the interest and for the interest of African people, but it is useful for us to analyze the standards, the hypocrisy of the war criminals in action and how they impose their geopolitical will on the rest of the world through these contradictions and hypocrisy. So we're going to move on now to Pakistan and Bangladesh, having just dealt with Cambodia in relation to Henry Kissinger. Pakistan, Bangladesh offers another example. There, Kissinger could be questioned for his role in aiding and abetting Pakistan's atrocities during the civil war in 1979, which killed hundreds of thousands of East Pakistanis and forced 10 million to flee to India, which killed hundreds of thousands of East Pakistanis. East Pakistan, by the way, is what is now today called Bangladesh, and forced 10 million to flee to India. 10 million is a whole lot of people, you know. Under international criminal law, the crime of aiding and abetting consists of two elements: the actus reus and mens rea. You notice how them use up them Latin word, yeah? You know, them legal and them scientific profession. You notice that, all right? All right. The precise standard of these two requirements have developed over time, with almost each international criminal jurisdiction adopting slightly different rules. In general, the actus reus element is satisfied when the accused gives practical assistance, quote, practical assistance, encouragement, or moral support which had a substantial effect on the perpetration of a crime. Yeah, so let me read that again. In general, the actus reus element is satisfied when the accused gives, quote, practical assistance, encouragement, or moral support which had a substantial effect on the perpetration of a crime. The ad hoc tribunals considered that the mens rea standard was met when the accused had knowledge of his acts. Sorry, let me read that again. The ad hoc tribunals considered the mens rea standard was met when the accused, quote, had knowledge that his acts would assist the commission of the crime by the perpetrator, or be aware of the substantial likelihood, whilst the International Criminal Court, ICC, requires that the accused act with the purpose of facilitating the principal crime. The civil war in Pakistan began when the supposedly outgoing military ruler of Pakistan, General Aga Muhammad Yahya Khan, launched an attack on the eastern Bengali half of the country, subsequently Bangladesh, following an election victory by the independence-minded Bengali leader Sheikh Mujib ur Rahman. Pakistan's military, dominated by Western Punjabis, received some 80% of its weapons from the United States and depended on United States for ammunition and spare parts to keep it operating. Misseh, Pakistan's military, dominated by Western Punjabis, received some 80% of its weapons from the United States and depended on the United States for ammunition and spare parts to keep it operating. By the way, whenever, again, as I said yesterday, them say the people them did receive weapons from the United States. What they mean is that the United States government has opened up a market for the private corporations, military weapons manufacturers that serve its interests, like Boeing and forgetting the name of that one there, I'll come back to it in a second, yeah? All right. And there's a relationship between high officials of those corporations and personnel in the ministries of defense, yes, within the American government. Okay, there's a relationship between people who act in the higher echelon of these weapons manufacturers and personnel that you find, yes, in the government operating in departments of defense and also the CIA. All right, it's very, very important for us to note these things. All right, State Department staff in Dhaka, the principal city of East Pakistan, witnessed the violence in which the Pakistani military strafed villages, targeted Hindus who composed 10% of the population, and raped tens of thousands of women. Their reports to Washington relayed the slaughter in gruesome detail and pressed for action to stop the violence, but they were ignored. As described by Princeton professor Gary Bass in his book, The Blood Telegram. Yes, a note them book here. The Blood Telegram, Nixon, Kissinger, and a Forgotten Genocide by Archer Blood. Yeah, Archer Blood, the U.S. Consul General in 1971 in Dakar, and sorry, not by Archer Blood, by Gary Bass. Or Bass, depending on how you pronounce it. I don't know. Yeah. But Archer Blood is quoted in the book. The U.S. Consul General in 1971 in Dhaka, and 20 of his staff in desperation sent a dissent cable accusing the administration of moral bankruptcy and demanding action to stop the genocide in order to, quote, salvage our nation's position as a moral leader in the free world. Yeah. So Archer Blood and the boys, yeah, over there in Dhaka, were concerned that what was going on in Pakistan was going to affect America's moral position, its position as the moral leader of the free world. That is what they were concerned about. Kenneth B. Keating, a former Republican senator from New York, then serving as the American ambassador to India, personally confronted Nixon and Kissinger in the Oval Office about, quote, a matter of genocide. Nixon and Kissinger would not have it, however. Nixon and Kissinger would not have it, however. Nixon and Kissinger would not have it, however. They ousted Blood, who Kissinger privately scorned as a maniac, from his post in East Pakistan. So, Blood, say, listen, brethren, we are the moral leader of the free world, you know. We can't do them things, you know. We can't, them things are bold and public and all. We can't engage in them things, you know. We have to stop them things because we are the moral leader of the free world. And Kissinger, yeah, Kissinger. And Nixon said, move your blow out, morally, move your bumbo, and come out of the office where we give you. Yeah. So instead of going after the people them that were committing, them go after them, their employee. Yes, in the region, because I'm saying, well, we can't do them thing yet. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Kissinger, Nixon telling Kissinger, sorry, we got back to this part here. Yeah. They ousted Blood, who Kissinger privately scorned as a maniac, from his post in East Pakistan. While Nixon called Keating a traitor, he's betraying the interest of the United States of America empire. Traitor. Yes. Not only did the pair despise India and Indira Gandhi, who had sided with East Pakistan, White House tapes, this is in parentheses, White House tapes reveal Nixon telling Kissinger that Indians needed a mass famine. Yeah, you know, the example of Winston Churchill was inspiring them in that instance. Kissinger mocked people who bleed for the dying Bengalis, but they were relying on Yahya as their back channel for upcoming breakthrough visit to China. But they were relying on Yahya as their back channel for the upcoming breakthrough visit to China. So Kissinger, arguably his most celebrated diplomatic feat is renewing some form of relationship with China, yes, during this period. Yeah, arguably his most celebrated diplomatic feat. And that had implications because American corporations were looking for cheaper sources of labor, and diplomacy with China allowed them to outsource and export their labor from the mainland over to places like China and over to places like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh at certain points as well. Okay, so it's a very significant transformative time, yes, in Western foreign policy and geopolitics. When he returned from his first secret trip to Beijing, Kissinger reported back to Nixon on Pakistan's help and joked that Yahya hasn't had such fun since the last Hindu massacre. Thus, Kissinger certainly knew of Pakistan's crimes as they were being committed. And that is important based upon the standard, yeah, in the when them terminology there again. Let me just remind myself of the wording, yeah. Actus reus and mens rea. Yeah, the actus reus and the mens rea. All right. Okay, so your knowledge and your support, moral, or your provision of resources for the committings of the crime, yeah, variously depending on which act we're dealing with, is applicable in terms of the standard of having committed a crime. Rather than seeking to restrain the Pakistani military, however, Nixon and Kissinger knowingly broke US law by approving and concealing their approval of the transfer to Pakistan of American supplied F-104 starfighter bombers, yeah, from Jordan and Iran. All right. And so bear it in mind, yeah, Rayfon, that's the name of the company. Rayfon. Yeah, it's got that by head. So you got Rayfon, Boeing, and this particular starfighter bomber is actually manufactured by Lockheed. Yeah, all right, Lockheed Martin. Yeah, another arms manufacturer. All right, another arms manufacturer. And so when we see that the again, them say America supplied arms, what they really mean is they're creating a market for their arms manufacturers. Okay. Bear all these things in mind. But for those who are just joining us, we're exploring international law as developed by the war criminals, Western war criminals, and how one of their own stands up to the criteria of being charged with war crimes as a means for exploring why he never was charged with war crimes. Stay tuned. Yeah, we have a little more time to this, so we're going to open up the lines a little more, and then people can come through and comment and share, add to what I'm saying, you know, challenge me. Although I question the sanity of any African who wishes to mount a defense of Henry Kissinger. But I know some I want to exist. All right, where was I? So I was saying that the F-104 starfighter bomber that America supplied to Pakistan to commit its genocide against what is now called Bangladesh, is a product of Lockheed. All right, the corporation Lockheed Martin. Okay, as Base's book makes clear, Kissinger then resisted growing calls to criticize Pakistani behavior or to suggest that Pakistan refrain from using US military arms against civilians in East Pakistan. Quote, a month into the slaughter, the Nixon administration firmed up Pakistan policy in the quiet of the Oval Office. Kissinger urged the president to continue to support to continue support for Yahya with only a little retreat. That quote unquote retreat was a decision to allow spare parts to continue to flow, but to hold off new shipments of certain controversial items. You know, remember I said yesterday that when they're eulogizing a war criminal who served the interests, the genocidal maniac who served the interest of the West, they use the word, as far as they go, is to acknowledge that they're a controversial figure. That euphemism right there. Same again, You know what I'm saying, So, the retreat was a decision to allow spare parts to continue to flow, but to hold off on new shipments of certain controversial items, euphemisms, in order to not to provoke the Congress to force cutting off all aid. And you know that the Department of Defense has a significant amount of leeway in this regard, but funding for such activities is the jurisdiction of Congress. And so Congress might lock off the peas, basically, which generally doesn't mean anything in real terms because, America has a whole next secret war budget that then put to very good use. All right. Congress now see that. And it's not even registered on official reports. That secret war budget, they don't even register that. So you're not going to see it on an official economic document. You're not going to see it registered upon GDP. And the GDP per capita. You're not going to see them thing there. On the official documentation. Where we there? On Kissinger's explicit suggestion, Nixon also added a handwritten commentary to the memo that would be distributed internally to all hands. Don't squeeze Yahya at this time. He underscored the word don't 3 times. The actus reus requirement for Kissinger's aiding and abetting would appear to be satisfied by the military assistance provided to Pakistan, particularly the Starfighter bombers, after the slaughter was underway. See ICC statute article 25, 3C, where abetting includes providing the means for commission of crimes. Perhaps the most similar case is the Special Court for Sierra Leone's conviction. Note, Sierra Leone's conviction. Note, Sierra Leone's conviction of former Liberian President Charles Taylor for aiding and abetting the rebels in neighboring Sierra Leone as they committed horrific abuses against civilians. The court found that Taylor knew of the atrocities being committed against civilians by his Sierra Leonean allies and of their propensity to commit crimes. Nevertheless, the court said, Taylor continued to ship arms to rebels and provide them with political and moral support and encouragement. These standards would certainly describe Kissinger's role, which was the equivalent of giving encouragement and weapons to a man on a killing spree. Now, we're not going to today explore exactly where Charles Taylor was getting those arms and who he was acting on behalf of. We're not going to explore that today. But just note that Liberia does not manufacture any arms, okay? Liberia is not a manufacturer of arms, and nor, for that matter, is Sierra Leone, okay? There are no big companies of Sierra Leonean and Liberian domicile at our big arms manufacturers. Okay, that should be obvious. All right. Okay. In the end, the Indian army intervened to defeat Pakistan and free East Pakistan, which became the new nation of Bangladesh. All right. I'm going to read straight through this one, get to the end so we can open up the lines very quickly. So the last example that Reed Brody uses is that of East Timor. Yeah, now check this one. East Timor could be another instance of Kissinger's aiding and abetting a client state's crimes. After the Timorese declaration of independence from Portugal in 1975, Kissinger and President. So, by the way, just a note, yesterday we was reading from the independence of Angola and how America and other Western nations funded, including apartheid South Africa, funded certain forces, yeah, in Angola. The date 1975 is significant because a number of nations that were, as I said yesterday, a number of nations that were colonized by Portugal received pushed for independence, yeah, after this point, because in 1974, a dictatorship in Portugal had been overthrown. All right. And so those nations that were colonized by Portugal used that instability to push for greater independence. Yeah. And it was basically clear that Portugal, who had been holding on to their colonies, were no longer able to engage in colonialism, and the government that came to power in Portugal was said to have been quote unquote left leaning and basically militarily withdrew, yes, from a lot of their colonial possessions. Yeah. So where was I? After the Timorese declaration of independence from Portugal in 1975, Kissinger and President Ford, General Ford, fearing the new country would become a communist outpost, gave Indonesian President Suharto the green light to invade the island of, in a Jakarta meeting the day before the actual invasion. Yeah. So we'll see this wagwan. Kissinger and President Gerald Ford, fearing that the new country would become a communist outpost. Again, we're dealing with the Cold War. So just the mere relationship to quote unquote communism made you rife for US or US backed invasion and aggression. Okay. All right. Leaders of the free world, brothers and sisters, do you remember this? Yeah. Communist outpost gave Indonesian President Suharto the green light to invade the island. So notice this. Indonesia is a sovereign nation. Yeah. Why does it require the green light from America to take an action such as this? Let us move on. A major factor in restraining Jakarta had been concern over using US weapons. According to the State Department record of the December 6, 1975 meeting, Suharto acknowledged that their quote will probably be a small guerrilla war. And Kissinger told him, as he had told Argentina, it is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly. The United States was then supplying Indonesia's military with 90% of its arms, and Kissinger himself described their relationship as that of a donor-client. The United States was then supplying Indonesia's military with 90% of its arms, and Kissinger himself described their relationship as that of a donor client. Virtually all of the military equipment used in the invasion was US supplied. As the civilian death toll from the invasion climbed into the tens of thousands, Kissinger ensured that US arms continued to flow to the invading forces despite congressional strictures in Section 502B A2 of the Foreign Assistance Act against the use of US arms in the gross violation of human rights, as well as a bilateral agreement stipulating that the US supplied arms could only be used for defense purposes. And by this time, brothers and sisters, we should note that the US has already a well-established history of supplying arms and even hiring mercenaries all around the African world. A December 18th, 1975 memorandum shows Kissinger apoplectic at his top staff for writing an internal memo regarding the legal problems with using US arms for the invasion. Kissinger decided to finesse the legal problem by telling Congress that aid would be cut off while we are studying the issue, but that aid would start again in January. And so it came to pass. A modified suspension of military aid to Indonesia was imposed for 6 months, but in name only. Military equipment already in the pipeline continued to flow. And during the 6-month review period, the United States made 4 new offers of military equipment sales to Indonesia, including maintenance and spare parts for aircraft design, especially for counterinsurgency operations and employed during the invasion of East Timor. US military aid to Jakarta more than doubled from 1974 to 1976, from 17 million to $40 million, which included 16 counterinsurgency aircrafts, 3 transport aircrafts, 36 armored cars, which according to the 1977 congressional hearing were directly used in East Timor. The aircraft reportedly may have been used for spraying chemical defoliants. That's important because chemical weapons are illegal as it relates to the Geneva Convention. And that's why Israel is in some hot water, because apparently they were spraying white sulfur or something near Gaza over the people in Gaza whilst denying it. But apparently there's evidence to the effect that that is a fact. Yeah. While white phosphorus, I think it's not sulfur, phosphorus or something still. So please correct me if I'm misremembering the name of the thing. All right. The UN Security Council ordered Indonesia to withdraw, but to no avail. Then UN Ambassador Daniel Patrick Moynihan took pride in his UN memoirs in having rendered the UN utterly ineffective in whatever measures it undertook. Kissinger's actus reus was this practical assistance, which had a substantial effect on Indonesian crimes. The final report of East Timor's Landmark Commission for Reception, Truth and Reconciliation. Note, the final report of East Timor's Landmark Commission for Reception, Truth and Reconciliation found that the US political and military support were fundamental to the Indonesian invasion and occupation. Indonesia is still committing war crimes in West Papua to this day. We have an interview, with Brother Benny Wendo, is a West Papua activist, on this channel. All right, I'm gonna leave that video in the link to this. Sorry, the link to that video in the description to this video as well. All right. So do stay tuned. Yeah, for that. Kissinger, sorry, and no one else, including Ford, was calling the shots in providing that support, can be seen from most of the minutes and memoranda of the meetings. Unlike in Pakistan, however, there is no hard evidence of Kissinger's real-time knowledge of ongoing atrocities, which would probably be necessary to meet the mens rea standard, since he could not reasonably be charged with advanced awareness of the substantial likelihood that war crimes would be committed by Indonesia in the ensuing small guerrilla war. There were no foreign journalists in the territory, Indonesia having murdered 5 Australian journalists before the invasion. As the CIA predicted 3 days after the invasion, East Timor's isolation would, quote, facilitate the efforts the Indonesians are sure to make and keep information on Timorese dissidents from reaching the outside world, unquote. Still, there was substantial evidence of the killings available on Kissinger's watch. The British embassy quickly reported that, quote, once the Indonesian forces had established themselves in Dili, they went on a rampage of looting and killing, unquote. In February 1976, a moderate Timorese leader suggested a death toll of at least 55,000. In the first 2 months of the invasion, and a delegation of Indonesian relief workers agreed with this statistic. A late 1976 report by the Catholic Church also estimated the death toll of between 60 and 100,000. A March 1976 declassified document reports a Timorese defector from an Indonesian delegation telling a U.S. embassy official in Lisbon that Indonesia was forcing integration of East Timor with Indonesia against its will, and alleging numerous atrocities against the civilian population, of which he had the documentary photographic proof. The embassy official commented that the source documentation seems genuine. Hoping everybody good. Let me see. The embassy official commented that the source documents, quote, seem genuine and that his story jives with redacted. Whether Kissinger was aware of these reports remains to be shown. There may be other potential cases against Kissinger for the secret bombings in Laos, the most heavily bombed country in history. Operation Speedy Express in Vietnam, or Operation Condor. That latter one, a very serious one. Operation Condor. Another subject for another time. A coordinated effort in the 1970s by the secret police forces of 7 South American dictatorships to hunt down one another's dissidents. Yet Kissinger has not once been ever questioned by a court about any of his alleged crimes. In 2004, a U.S. federal court dismissed on political questions grounds a civil suit brought against Kissinger by the family of a Chilean army commander-in-chief, General Rene Schneider, who was killed in a botched kidnapping attempt which Kissinger allegedly masterminded in a failed attempt to stop Salvador Allende. Now, Salvador Allende is the head of government in Chile, who 50 years ago, America supported the Pinochet dictatorship to overthrow. From ascending to power after his election in the early 2000s, judges from Argentina, Chile, France, and Spain sought Kissinger's testimony regarding crimes committed by U.S. client regimes in South America in the 1970s. In 2001, he had to flee to Paris after being summoned by a judge. When Kissinger was in London in 2002, the same year that the International Criminal Court was established, British activist Peter Thatchell unsuccessfully sought his arrest on charges related to the Vietnam War. Although Kissinger's alleged crimes were committed well before the heyday of international justice began in 1998 with the creation of the ICC and the London arrest of Augusto Pinochet. Yeah, so bear that in mind. Yeah, Pinochet comes out of office and eventually he's arrested. Cambodia, Bangladesh, and East Timor, in fact, created war crimes tribunals which could have covered his acts. Bear this in mind. Cambodia, Bangladesh, and East Timor, in fact, created war crimes tribunals which could have covered his acts. The extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, however, only had jurisdiction over the Khmer Rouge period. So listen carefully now. Tribunals existed in Cambodia to deal with war crimes, but the jurisdiction was limited to the period of the Khmer Rouge, which was after Kissinger's direct involvement as far as destabilizing and carpet bombing Cambodia. This limitation was insisted on by the United States. So even when there was an opportunity to bring this man to book, the United States imposed a restriction on the thing to ensure that them people don't get brought to book. The United States is a central nation in the establishment of the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, and who stands before this court. While Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal can only prosecute persons living in Bangladesh, and East Timor special panels did not in practice investigate crimes before 1999. So all of these tribunals that could possibly bring Kissinger and any other US official to justice somehow impose restrictions on the proceedings that protect Western war criminals. Many of Kissinger's clients in Argentina and Chile have also been prosecuted. Yet for all the advances made by international justice, a powerful American former Secretary of State still seems beyond its grasp. And that concludes the article, Kings and Queens. If you have a contribution to share right about now, feel free to come through. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. And as you're coming through, I'm going to just delve into one more piece. I'm just going to read a snippet from the Wikipedia page for the International Criminal Court, the ICC. Yeah. All on there. All right. So this is the International Criminal Court. In October of 2016, after repeated claims that the court was biased against African states, In October 9, 2016, after repeated claims that the court was biased against African states, Burundi, South Africa, and the Gambia announced their withdrawals from the Rome Statute. Following Gambia's presidential election later that year, which ended the long rule of Yahya Jammeh, Gambia rescinded its withdrawal notification. A decision by the High Court of South Africa in early 2017 ruled that the attempted withdrawal was unconstitutional, as it had not been agreed by Parliament, prompting the South African government to inform the UN that it was revoking its decision to withdraw. African accusations of Western imperialism. The ICC has been accused of bias and as being a tool of Western imperialism, only punishing leaders from small, weak states while ignoring crimes committed by richer and more powerful states. This sentiment has been expressed particularly by African leaders due to an alleged disproportionate focus on of the court on Africa. While it claims to have a global mandate, until 2016, all 9 situations in the ICC had been investigating were in African countries. Until 2016, all 9 situations which the ICC had been investigating were in African countries. If I'm not mistaken, that 2016 one is the one where I believe it was a Russian guy who committed suicide in the court, took a pill. Yeah, I watched that. Madness. Forget him name. Yeah. African critics have suggested that the ICC is acting as a neo-colonial force seeking to further empower Western political and extractive interests in Africa. Scholar Awol Allo has described the court's underlying problem that has led to these changes with Africa as not overt racism, but Eurocentrism. Another analysis suggests that African states are motivated by concerns over Africa's place in world order. The problem is the sovereign inequality displayed by the ICC prosecutors' focus. Yeah, I'm not going to read any more, but I'm just bearing in mind that this institution, now, but bear in mind that the crimes of Taylor, yes, Charles Taylor, were most of them were prior to the establishment of the International Criminal Court. Yeah, most of the people that have been brought before it have been brought before it for crimes that precede its establishment. All right, and so these things are necessary to know. The link is in the chat. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. If you want to come through, I'm gonna start reading now. Yeah, and the good brother Imhotep has joined us. So feel free to click the link if you want to come through, kings and queens. Yeah, feel free to click the link if you want to come through. I hope ones and ones have been dutifully informed. If you would like to ask a question from the chat, yeah, if you would like to ask a question from the chat, you don't want to come live, please at gotkushTV. Yeah, and Imhotep says, as already told me, yeah, white phosphorus. I think I got that correct in the end. So give thanks. But Imhotep, you there?
I am here. Can I be clearly heard?
Not so clearly, but you can be heard.
All right, hold a sec.
Yes, kings and queens. But once again, the link is in the chat.
Is this any better?
Yep, beautiful, lovely.
Beautiful. Peace and Pan-African power to everybody under the sound of my voice. As per usual, I wanted to ask if I might share my screen for a second, just to give some context.
Feel free.
But I don't even tell you why. I bet. Hold on a second.
Let me say this while you're bringing the screen up here. So the reason why we've gone through this to contextualize the thing, yes, is that what we are dealing with is institutions of power. This is how power operates in the world, that they can establish standards and avoid having to meet those standards, yes, in the furtherance and maintenance of their power. Okay? But Garvey teaches us about the power of institutions and how the extent to which nothing can be achieved in today's world outside of the context of institutions. Yeah? So when we see a demon like Henry Kissinger, who is able to manifest his demonic behavior with impunity, understand that this is because he represents the interest of Western imperialism, white supremacy. And so the reason why white men never charge with war crimes is because Western empire is a criminal empire. That is why. And within the context of a criminal empire, the only real crimes are those acts which go against challenge or are not in the interest of Western imperialist white supremacist empire. All right, Imhotep, your screen is up, so I'm going to share it. You want to get the right screen? Yeah, and so we see that there. So, what are you sharing with us?
So I just had to turn my mic back on. So this is a piece of legislation. I'm actually surprised that you didn't mention it. Informally known as the Hague Invasion Act, but more formally known as the American Service Members Protection Act, which gives the US president the power to use all means necessary and appropriate to bring about the release of any US or allied personnel being detained or imprisoned by, or on behalf of, or at the request of the International Criminal Court. So I really just wanted to highlight some of the hypocrisy of the North American empire, known colloquially as the United States of America, in that the United States is not even a member of the ICC. They are not signatory to the ICC. So they actually aren't bound by, by its rules or whatever. And not only that, they've given themselves the right to invade the Hague should any of their allies or service members be, interned, let's say, at the International Criminal Court. So I was just surprised that you didn't bring that up. But
no, give time.
also,
that's why we have open house, and we can't say everything. So we give thanks to brothers and sisters who add to the thing. That what you just mentioned is actually noted on the ICC Wikipedia page itself. Yeah. For a little bit down from where I was reading, they actually note that there. But give thanks for bringing that to the conversation. Go ahead, continue.
Oh, and yeah, the final thing is just a piece of Trini pride that one of our, well, I suppose our most astute statesman, the only politician to have ever been prime minister and president at the same time, was also one of the persons who spurred let's say revived the idea of an international criminal court. His name is Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, and I learned his name when I was probably like 5 years old in primary school.
No, yeah, you know what? It's an interesting fact about what they call human rights law, because they make it a preserve and a gift of the West to the world. But to a significant degree, much of the statutes within it are born of things that people within their colonized nations were fighting for, rights, that people in their colonized nations were fighting for. And it has been noted by some historians the extent to which the Declaration of Human Rights resembles to a significant degree the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World, which was written up and presented in 1920 at the International Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World under the leadership of Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the UNIA ACL in 1920. So just important things to note, that where Africans won't necessarily get the credit, for these things, because they have to be gifts of the West to the world, because America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Britain is the bastion of democracy, who gave, left the colonies of good governance and institutions and all of these things. And so these are facts of history that we need to take note of. You know what I'm saying? Brothers and sisters, feel free to click the link if you want to come live, contribute, make a comment, challenge the thing. It's all entirely up to you. And if you want to, if you would like to, post a question from the chat, you can feel free to do so. Just be sure to @gotkushTV, @gotkushTV, so that I know that you want your comment read out. And for those who would like to support GotkushTV, and by the way, giving thanks here, we've got a few new contributors to our Patreon. I'm not calling name because I was gonna call names but I wasn't sure. It occurred to me that some people might just want to be contributors privately, so when I call on name, but you want to know who Uno is. So give thanks, for those who have joined our GotkushTV Patreon, and stay tuned, because I'm arranging some perks for you all in the coming year. All right, so do stay tuned to that. We're gonna give you some preliminary access to certain thing, as well as some things like the Black History Month series that we did recently is going to be available to you depending on your level of contribution. All right. So give thanks one and all who have joined the Patreon. We encourage you and feel free to do so if you so wish. Right. Let me say, Brother Imhotep, you have anything more to contribute at this point?
More questions, I suppose, than overt contributions. If
Go
we
ahead.
could just widen the discussion maybe a little bit into some other U.S. Uh, foreign policy actors, let's say. I didn't
Yep.
know that Kissinger was a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, and I
Yes.
found it, well, more ironic to be fair. I was going to be facetious, but more ironic than hearing that Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I tend not to hate on Obama in public, except in
You
a
sure?
space full of Africans.
Yeah, I hear
Except in
you.
a space full of Africans. And in a space full of Africans, I feel no qualms about, denigrating that man to the highest heavens. But in the
Yes.
same way that Obama was a, well, I'll put it like this: can we make the same assertion about Obama that we can make about Kissinger, that he is overtly a war criminal and should have been brought to
100%.
the
Absolutely. Without question.
Mm. And so, would there be any? Because I'm taking this piece of propaganda from a gentleman named Noam Chomsky. I'm fairly certain you know who he is, right? States that I think there's every president since I think like Carter or something like that, or Nixon, should
Yeah.
be brought up in the Hague for war crimes.
And a few of them before. Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, seriously. I forget who it was, Was it Wilson? When America invaded Haiti, war crimes, yeah, in 1915, yeah, war crimes, all right, occupied the nation up until 1934, yeah, war crimes, straight. But as far as Obama is concerned, the interesting thing is that they gave it to him at the beginning of his presidency to encourage him to earn it. Yeah, they even stated it in the speech that through which they presented him. We're giving it to you with the expectation that you fulfill the promise or some stupidness. Yeah, Obama expanded. Well, not that he had much choice in the matter, but Obama expanded and increased America's military operations. The drone program, yes, of America was significantly increased under Obama. And the fact that we have, I believe, some 30 odd military bases on the African continent under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Africa Military High Command, better known as AFRICOM, is to a significant degree due to Obama. Yeah, and that is to say nothing of what took place in Libya. Yes, with the killing of Gaddafi. Not a fan of Gaddafi, but what was committed by America at that time was a war crime. Yeah, and a significant amount. Say again?
I said extrajudicial, yeah.
Yeah, 100%, and a significant amount of the destabilization that we see in West Africa today, as far as quote unquote jihadi movements, can be attributed to that time as a beginning, because the American government imported, yes, a number of quote unquote jihadi mercenaries into Libya during that time, and when Libya fell, those people made their way into other parts of other parts of Africa, notably West Africa. So yes, Obama is a war criminal, and he is known to have employed other war criminals, particularly from the Clinton era, in his cabinet when he came to power. Yeah. All right.
And but you're kind of sticking for me. I don't know if the connection is bad on my side, but a final point, well, hopefully I find a point of order, that not only is the United States not a member of the ICC, but another rogue state currently committing a genocide is also. Sorry?
You're cracking up. You're cracking up. Kings and Queens, give us a second. And I crack. Okay, Imhotep has dropped off, so I'm assuming it was him that was cracking up. Just give me a signal, family. Let me know if you can hear me clearly. Good. Let me know. And we'll continue from there. I just want to make sure that my signal is good and the connection is correct. No one's more minutes to join the conversation via the panel. 5 more minutes to ask your questions. Yeah, if nobody, my connection is breaking up. Okay. Oh, greetings, Ellery. My connection is breaking up apparently. Imhotep, can you hear me good?
I was hearing you great until you asked me if I could hear you good, but yeah.
All right, that's probably our thing now. We have to start wrap up the thing. But yeah, all right, keep us in tune, family, yeah, brothers and sisters, keep us in tune. Where I'm gonna allow, if nobody else comes through in the next 5 minutes, then we're gonna wrap up the show. All right, I'm hoping I'm still clear. But yeah, okay. Chris says we're better now. And good brother Ellery has joined us. Greetings, my brother. Long time. Hoping that you're well.
Hello, greetings. Can you hear me? I hope my connection is a lot better. You can hear me?
Yes, quite clearly.
Yes, sir.
Oh, brilliant. Hi. Hello, I was just calling in. It's been a while. I hope you're well. I just called in because I saw the title in regards to Kissinger, and it was interesting that both of you mentioned a lot of the double standards in his behavior, yet he was honored more than called out and disgraced. But it depends from which side you're talking. I was recently reading that he had problems with the Jamaican prime minister in the 70s, Manley, because
he had problems.
And I think
Manley,
and I think you might have already discussed it, because I'm coming quite late in. I'm guessing you might have discussed it, because I just read that I think he wanted to put pressure on Cuba and via Jamaica, but Manley wasn't having it, because Manley was calling him out. Well, Manley said, well, you supporting South Africa, who are invading Angola and trying to prevent Angola from getting its independence, and Cuba is helping Angola. And that kind of caused tension between Manley and Kissinger, because Kissinger was trying to implement some program or something. So I think you probably mentioned it. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I just found that fascinating that Manley actually stood his ground like that. And I thought that was quite impressive that he did that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mention it today. I did touch on it yesterday. Yeah. We did a stream yesterday and I touched on it yesterday. So the story involves Angola. Yeah. And Angola comes to its independence in 1975. And basically, that you got 3 forces, and I'm forgetting basically you've got the MPLA, which was a more revolutionary force, socialist. Then you've got those who, the UNITA and the FNLA. UNITA was once socialist but moved to the right, and so on and so forth, And what happened was, because of the fact that America and apartheid South Africa had interest in Angola, and at this time as well, Kissinger was in league. Kissinger specifically had inherited the legacy of his predecessors, basically all of his predecessors since 1961, because he was supporting Mobutu Sese Seko in Cuba, Joseph Mobutu, the tyrannical dictator backed by the West up until the 1990s, yeah, and murderer of Patrice Lumumba. All right, him and Kissinger had a very close relationship, and so what happened was America was also in league with apartheid South Africa during this period, yeah, and Kissinger had close relationships with Vorster, who was the prime minister, so the president at the time of apartheid South Africa. He also had a close relationship with Ian Smith, who was the head of state in Zimbabwe, yeah, then called Rhodesia. And so with American assistance, South Africa has sent paid mercenaries to Angola to fight the MPLA, who was the most popular political party among the Angolan people during this time, but not acting in the interest of the West, because it was openly challenging apartheid South Africa when UNITA and the FNLA were willing to be friendly with apartheid South Africa. And so apartheid South Africa sent the mercenaries, and also America was militarily backing UNITA in particular, yeah, during this time, okay? And so in response, basically, the MPLA forces, I'm cutting a long story short, but the MPLA forces were basically winning against UNITA and the FNLA, and they were even winning when America funded UNITA, yeah, and pushing them back, yeah, and it came to a point whereby they began to be overwhelmed by the South African mercenaries that were being sent in, yeah, who are also again American backed. And so the MPLA reached out to Cuba, and Manley already had a friendly relationship with Cuba, for which he was accused of being a socialist, a communist, which he was not. Yeah, Manley was not anything like a socialist or a communist or any kind of a revolutionary, but he was just prepared to be friendly with Cuba, partly because there was a significant forces in his party that he had to curry favor with if he was going to have any legitimacy as the prime minister. Yeah, and so the time because of the influence of and other Black Power forces, the Black Power movement was very strong. There was a strong anti-apartheid movement in Jamaica, yes, and Manley's power base was really included those people, yeah. So his legitimacy could not sustain basically challenging Cuba, because Cuba now responded to the MPLA's call by sending military personnel, yeah, and the American government tried to paint this as a Soviet-Russian incursion, so that it could justify using the machinery of the state. Yeah. So I've made a story longer than I needed to, basically. But what happened is Kissinger began to develop a relationship with Manley's rival, an American-born CIA agent by the name of Edward Seaga, and began to support Seaga like in terms of arms as well. That resulted in significant destabilization in Jamaica through the fomenting of political violence. Yeah, and so Seaga effectively wins the next election with American backing, and basically vows to make Jamaica amenable to the interest of quote unquote foreign investors. Read American into that. Yeah, so that's the story of how that went. And so yeah, Kissinger was vexed with Manley because Cuba's support of Angola in this regard was a sign of the weakness of America in the region, whereas Seaga allowed them to assert more influence because of America's relationship with Cuba and the embargoes against it and so on and so forth. I hope that answers your inquiry.
Yes, I knew about that. I've come across white South Africans from time to time, and I've always surprised them when I know about that war, and I know their age, and I say, so you must have served in that war where you invaded Angola, and the shock of look on their face when they know. One guy I said that to, I actually bumped into him in Speaker's Corner. He's like a flat earther. He actually wrote a book about his experience. I saw it on his channel, and he had the picture of him when he was in a tank division, him and his friends. But before he even did that, I had the conversation with him, and I said, you served in that war? And he looked shocked, and he said to me, yes, brother, but we were lied to. We were told that we were fighting to stop communism. And
communism, that was the excuse. That was always the excuse. You know what I'm saying? That they were able to use at that time. And as I've said repeatedly, that they've invested, America and Britain have invested a lot of propaganda into the communist caricature, so that anytime they can label something communist or someone communist, to whatever extent they are or not, because not everybody that they labeled a communist was in fact a communist, and not everybody that was a socialist was in fact in bed with Russia, right? But they've made it so that whenever they say that, they can justify almost any action, in the world, based upon just calling somebody a communist. Communist is, yes, in yesteryear, is what the term terrorist is today. Invasion, any kind of action based upon those dynamics. Larry, please feel free to stay where you are. We have been joined by Coffee Campbell. Go ahead.
Yeah, big up. Okay. Just clearing up some errors and asking some questions. Michael Manley was a socialist. He was a democratic socialist. So, the PNP is a socialist party. All right. So he may not have been a dictator, but he was a socialist. You said that the MPLA was the most popular party at the time. It was when 1975 don't get independence. Yeah, around that time. What evidence do you have for that?
If you read the history, it's documented that the MPLA was the most popular party around the time. Not just even in Angola. Among the Pan-African world, the MPLA was the most popular party in Angola. So nobody actually disputes that.
Well, I don't know about Pan-African world. I'm talking about Angola.
In Angola, yeah, it's not disputed.
It's the one that matters.
Yeah,
but if they were so popular, why? If they were so popular, why they never have an election like ZANU-PF and come to power? Why did they assume power based on the Portuguese government giving them the machinery of the state, and then they start to use that machinery of the state against their rivals? If they were so popular,
I think you'll
if
find.
If they were so popular again, why, when even in their own ranks, populists in their own ranks, they have to kill them off and kill off those supporters? I don't know. I mean, everybody can research the Nico Alves uprising in 1977 and the role that Castro played in suppressing that uprising. I mean, that don't sound like a popular party to me.
I said that they were the most popular. I didn't say that they never had their detractors. So that's neither
but
here nor
on
there.
what evidence? What polls? What evidence you have that they were?
I'm
more than you need to. How?
I'm unable to give you direct polls and them kind of things there, but it's a matter of history. And when you read the history, there's no one that ever disputes the fact that as far as the people of, first of all, the MPLA had the biggest membership among the Angolan people. That's one thing, yeah.
What evidence you have for that? Based on
you would have
what evidence you have for that? Based on the readings that I do.
And
so, for instance,
what does this have to Sorry. What does this have to do?
So,
Sorry,
for
what does this have
instance,
to
this
do?
book,
Sorry,
you see this book?
Go on.
Yeah, according to that book, written by socialists, by the way. I mean, MPLA was not, according to you, popular among Angolans. It had supporters, but so did FNLA and so did UNITA. If you're going by ethnic group, numbers, then UNITA would have been the most populous. However, at that time there was no polling, there was no elections, so we don't know who would have won in 1975. So we can't say that at that time MPLA was the most popular. That's almost like communist propaganda. You know what I mean? That's exactly what communists would have wanted us to believe to justify dictatorship and Cuba's involvement in the war.
I'm miffed as to what this point, because even if everything that you're saying is correct, what does that have to do with what we're discussing at the moment in relation to Kissinger and American involvement in Angola? I'm suggesting that you're wrong.
Yeah, you brought up.
I'm suggesting that the MPLA being the most popular again doesn't mean it didn't have detractors. Evidently, the existence of UNITA and the FNLA would mean that yes, it did.
And Nito Alves, its own supporters.
What is clear, however, is that the support that that America and
You're breaking up.
others given. Am I breaking up again? Let me know if I'm
No.
clear.
You're clear to me.
Okay, cool. All right.
You're breaking up a little bit.
I'm able to hear you.
Yeah, again.
Okay, so it's obviously your connection, Coffee.
I'm curious. Does Kofi think the South African invasion was good
I can hear you now.
I'm curious.
Coffee, go out and come back in, please, because you seem to have a delay as well.
I can hear the question.
You have a delay, so go out and come back in, please.
I was going to ask you, ShakaRa, have you seen a documentary called Africa Adio?
No.
I've placed it in the backs. It's basically a documentary that was done in the 70s by a couple of Italian documentarians on the end of colonization in Africa. And the reason I mention it, it showed things going on in, I think, Angola, Congo, and it's quite graphic. It's on YouTube. I just put the link there. It's very fascinating. It's almost insane when you see the violence that had taken place in those parts of Africa, and you see the bodies lying about as these documentarians are filming. They did get into a bit of trouble for what they did, but it's even on YouTube. I just put it there. You might be interested because it does touch a bit on, I think, Angola as well as Congo. And
thank you for that. Much appreciated.
It shows them.
Much appreciated.
I would have liked to have known from the guy Kofi.
He's
what
back.
I got cut off.
Oh, you're back. Brilliant. I just wanted to know, in your opinion, South Africa's invasion, do you think it was there to benefit UNITA? Or did they have a different agenda, the South Africans?
South Africans had a different agenda to UNITA. But they were allies in that war. I mean, it's the same thing with America and the Mujahideen, or Israel and Hamas. They were once allies. But I mean, politics is not as simple as how some would want to make it out to be. So, for instance, even in Angola, you had different groups. All right, to paint the picture as good guys versus bad guys, you know, fighting good and evil in Angola, is really oversimplifying it. Because if UNITA's allies were South Africa, America, China, and some of the Eastern blocs. These were the countries that gave it weapons and support. MPLA, we supposed to be the anti-imperialist one. They got support from Russia, Cuba, and US oil companies. They even gave South African diamond companies concessions. You understand? So we owe it to black people not to paint a kind of comic book Disney World picture of good versus evil when it comes to politics, and especially politicians. You understand? We're buying.
Sorry, but
we play into
the fact
their
of the matter
hands
is,
and we get this
sorry, the
overthinking.
fact of the matter is, but the fact of the matter is, nobody was actually doing that. A history was given of America's involvement in Angola.
One thing is certain in Angola is that
excuse me, thank you. A history was given of America, and in particular Kissinger's role in fomenting and supporting certain forces the Angolan civil war, which actually erupted directly after the declaration of independence. Yeah. So again, nobody was actually saying that the other forces didn't have support. What was actually being said is that a significant amount of the support.
I was cut off. Sorry, you forgot. You forgot. Start over the question. I'm never here.
I wasn't asking the question because this is this is not about a detailed exploration of the internal dynamics of the Angolan civil war. It's a good subject, but not today's subject. And Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, break up. Anybody else hearing breaking up?
It's your connection, Coffee. It's not me.
No, I'm not gonna lie. That last one I did hear you break up a little bit.
Not me one. Yo, if today's subject is why aren't white people brought to book?
Sorry, I am not finished. Right. So the subject is Kissinger and his role as an American statesman, and the fact that America protects its war criminals. Yeah. Whatever we say about criminals who are represented on the African continent and among African people, one thing that we cannot say is that they are not characterized as war criminals for the most part. Well, to a significant degree, I shouldn't even say for the most part. And that a number of them are not brought to quote unquote justice as far as the International Criminal Court and other Western funded and imposed military courts is concerned. This is the case when it comes to Kissinger and all of the war criminals as it relates to the West. That is our subject today. So I could run down the weeds with you in terms of whether what you said in terms of the MPLA and so on and so forth was accurate. And if it is accurate, when exactly, what did it become accurate and so on and so forth. I could run down the fact that when an election was actually instituted, the MPLA did in fact win the election. I could run down all of these things, but it's not important to today's conversation. So what is the relevance? What do you have to contribute to the actual conversation as it stands at the moment?
That when the subject, that when the title is why white men don't get prosecuted, that too is a nuanced thing because Pinochet was indicted, I think. Castro, yeah, I think he was indicted. Castro was never indicted, and especially no, I know Castro was never indicted.
No. I'm talking about Pinochet. You think?
Oh God, man, yes, I think. Do you know? I don't know. If somebody can correct me, fine.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, because
how many attempts have there
I
been?
was making a point with Castro. You know why I hear that? Well,
How many attempts were there to indict Castro?
I don't know.
How many attempts were there to assassinate Castro?
I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. All right, cool. So
Okay, nice.
the point here is that
the point I was making before you interrupt still is that if you're going to take that, if I'm going to take that subtitle and apply it, I can apply it to Castro and all them other people that overcommit enough things. I mean, Kagame, we all know why Kagame not going to get indicted. Kabila is also well know why he won't be indicted. I mean, look.
What's the reason why they won't be indicted?
Because they're useful. Both of them are useful. Again.
To who?
To Western governments. So again,
you're making
when we look at conflicts, when we're looking at conflicts, sometimes it's very misleading to try and find good guys and bad guys, especially politicians. Agostino Neto, Dos Santos, you know, are these people heroes?
But
what is Savimbi a devil? Is Roberto Holden a devil? Because that's the socialist history, you know, that Savimbi and Roberto, they were CIA agents, but Agostino Neto and Dos Santos, they were the enemies of imperialism and so on. And that is just not true. Politics is far more complicated than that.
It's far more complicated than that, except the fact that but that would be the same. Okay, is that the same in relation to the Cold War?
What you mean is that the same? I don't understand the question.
Your analysis that you just said, is it? Would you apply the same in relation to the Cold War?
That is the Cold War. The Angolan Civil War was the Cold War. I was in the midst of the Cold War.
In fact, it wasn't. And this is the point, right? This
what?
Is the point. This is the point, right? So
1975 was war.
Oh, but again, so we're dealing with a Eurocentric analysis here. The Cold War took place during that period of time. What happened was that those forces who were in the Cold War, and particularly America, were trying to export what their interest onto the rest of the world. Yeah. And so they used the justification that anybody who didn't treat their enemies with the same yardstick that they would become America's enemies. Yeah. Whether they were in bed with Russia or not. Okay. Some were in bed with Russia, some were not. Some were just friendly with Russia. But America imposed a standard upon the world that said the world, because we are in the Cold War, the world is in the Cold War, and everybody must be judged and related to based upon what suits our interest. And if it doesn't suit our interest, we have and exercise the right to attack you physically, psychologically, assassinate your character, and etc., etc., etc. And they supported the most brutal dictators. Yes, in the name
included MPLA, right?
In the name of shoring up their interest.
Included MPLA, right?
But again, what we're doing here again is attempting to deflect the conversation.
No, you said dictatorships. Unless you want to say some dictatorships are better than others.
At this point in time, America was firmly against the MPLA by virtue of its actions.
How did US Gulf Oil get concessions?
By virtue of its actions in the support of UNITA in the Civil War. And
how did US Oil get concessions?
Excuse me. And the employment
of you know why you're that part then?
The MPLA. No, it's not that. We are discussing.
You know what complicate your neat Walt Disney view of politics.
I don't have a problem complicating issues. History.
Okay, so why you can't say that MPLA was a dictatorship supported by the West?
sorry. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Because at this point, we're talking about a civil war, and there were interest in this thing, right? So we're discussing.
And America
now,
supported them even during the Civil War.
So we are discussing now. The fact that America inserted itself into a conflict that existed in a nation under which it did not have jurisdiction. Yes, none whatsoever. Yeah.
Okay.
It imposed itself. It imposed itself as an ally of a criminal government that existed in South Africa at the time.
Yes.
While promoting itself as the leaders of the free world.
But MPLA was also criminal. How did MPLA come to power?
But why is it that the MPLA's criminality somehow mitigates the criminality of America? Why is it that
Don't ask me, I never said that.
Sorry, but you were the one who came in with the argument. So why is it that the MPLA...
I didn't say that. It mitigates anything.
The MPLA, were projected to the world as criminals. The MPLA were projected to the world as dictators. The MPLA...
Who said that?
Depicted to the world as America. The MPLA...
you mean the American government? Because leftists in America did not believe that.
America projected to... What are you talking about? America projected
leftists
to the world.
in America and Europe supported the MPLA.
Because you don't understand when we say America what we mean.
Yeah, the American government. Yeah, the American government. Yes.
Not just the American government, the American establishment. The American establishment.
All right, establishment, but American leftists supported MPLA, white and black.
Which is important because it is the American government and the American establishment that dictates America's foreign policy, not whatever random leftists you're talking about.
Okay, but when you say America, say MPLA, you have to specify.
Hold on. So again, this is what a part of the dynamics that feeds into why we have this particular title, because of the fact that when we begin to interrogate the fact that these people who, whatever we say about the MPLA does not have jurisdiction to decide who sits.
Was it a dictatorship? Was it an illegitimate government like the South African government?
Thank you very much. What the MPLA does not and never had was the power or the strength to decide who sits in front of the International Criminal Court. America does have that power. Yes, it's a significant difference. And that is the dynamic that we are interrogating today. We are interrogating the fact that these people who impose these laws on the rest of the world protect their own criminals. Yes, with impunity. We are discussing the fact that whilst America is allowing its own corporations to sell arms to other groups of people, at the point at which those people, become a thorn in America's side, or they're done with them, and or they're not reading from the script in the way that they should be again, America is able to get rid of them. We're discussing the fact that a known war criminal, he was responsible at this stage for an estimated for upwards of 3 million deaths throughout his career. That's an estimate because we don't know all of the details. Yeah.
Was he unique in terms of American Secretary of State?
If you were listening yesterday, I implored us not to see Kissinger as unique in relation to.
So why are you dedicating a whole program to him?
Again, once again, it's important to listen.
Okay, good. So what? Move on. He's 6 or 1 half dozen the other. He's no different from any other one. So it shouldn't matter if he's dead or I'm alive, because he's no better. Unless you're going to argue that there's something unique about Kissinger.
It doesn't matter, but it's not been argued that there's something unique about Kissinger. So again, what we're seeing here is a deflection tactic that is designed to protect the integrity of America.
How is it deflecting when I'm saying that Kissinger is the same as every other Secretary of State?
Because if I was discussing Castro, if I was discussing Lenin, using an American lens at this moment in time, you would not be coming on the panel to discuss with me how complex politics is and how those who were fighting Lenin in America and in Britain and fighting Castro in America and in Britain were just as brutal and just as demonic as Castro and Lenin were. That's not what we're
Well, if you supported Kissinger, if you supported Kissinger and then only cuss Castro, I would point out that Kissinger.
Thank you very much. I don't normally use the mute button. I've just muted Coffee, but he has a habit of interrupting, and we're not going to engage that today. All right. I should use the mute button more often. Yeah. The reality is that we are discussing Kissinger, as was said yesterday and today, not as an individual, but as an example of how imperialist power operates in today's world. And if you have a problem with that analysis based upon your allegiance to imperialist power and your desire to protect their interests, even in the face of Pan-Africanists who are standing and seeking to challenge that particular power, then that so be. I have no apologies for that. Yeah, none whatsoever. Yeah, Kissinger is your darling. Make him be your darling. But if you got a problem and if you are standing on principle in relation to the things that you're saying at the moment, I would like to see this analysis on the Ronald Reaganist platforms and the Trumpist platforms and the Heritage Foundation platforms. Yes, and in front of Congress and all of these things. Why you? Yes, and the people that would think like you. Why is it that you are not campaigning against the what do you call it now? The sanctions that have been imposed on Russia on the basis of the fact that America has no moral authority to impose sanctions on Russia based upon Putin being a tyrant, because America is a force for wickedness and evil in today's world. Oh, no, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, so we are analyzing the power that America wields in this world and the extent to which it is able to protect its war criminals. Let us assume that the MPLA are what you say they are. Those people were subject to an invasion and support against them militarily for whatever the West thought about them. The same with the Mau Mau, the Kenya Land and Freedom Army in Kenya. Yes, in the 1950s. Yes, they were characterized as terrorists. They were characterized as communists because the world had to be operating according to what was interesting to the West at that time. And so Africans who are colonized by these Western powers have to have our own liberation movement characterized according to Cold War dynamics. It was the Cold War, as though what was happening, what was most important to the West at that time was what was most important to the rest of the world. Nonsense. So we are entitled to analyze the passing of one of the most important figures in world history in the last 100 years in relation to not just the individual, as I said yesterday and today when the stream began, but as a statesman and a key player in Western empire. And if one does not want that analysis to be engaged, so be it. Burn like Kissinger is right about now. That's your business.
My turn to speak now, or
I was going to say it's fascinating how Kissinger was able to work with the Democrats and the Republicans.
100%. Yeah, this is not a left versus right thing. This is about power in the world.
Can I respond to what you said a while ago?
And how it operates in today's world. That's what this is about. Yes?
Can I respond to what you just said a while ago?
And the International Criminal Court, which is not run by the MPLA in Angola, but is run by America and serves American interests to the extent that none of its war criminals can be brought before it. And if you don't want to deal with that, I don't know why you come on the stream except for to run interference. I know it's this thing as well. You know, these little petty aspirants in the black conservative industrial complex. Little Nigel Farage on what the thing name again? I'm a celebrity. A belly.
Yeah, before you go on to that, let me just respond to what you said.
I believe about what the thing how white people can sing and use a Jamaican accent and
Cultural
the comedian
appropriation.
them, yeah, cultural appropriation, and some of the comedian about the place, yeah, want to run interference and chat about, but West Africans use Jamaican accent in their music, yeah. What does that have to do with Nigel Farage and what he was saying? But no, these people feel the need, yes, to jump in, yeah, and protect their masters in the American imperialist structure. I have no patience with these people.
Yeah. So when you put out information or when you're into the activist struggle, you have to kind of develop a thicker skin still. It's not all criticism of you. You're going to say, boy, you're a CIA agent or you're this agent. Just argue the merits at the points. You're not to go off in a kind of word throwing about me support Kissinger thing. When obviously me never say nothing like that. The point I try to make is that if you're going to talk about the civil war in Angola, the point that black people should get from this is that the enemy is power and centralization of power, especially in government. So for instance, Western and American government powerful enough to impose them savage will on everybody and all the rest of the world. And the Angolan government was powerful enough to impose its will on the Angolan people, right? So the real culprit, at least for me,
again, that would be false because just after the independence was actually declared, a civil war broke out based upon differences among the two major forces in the region, and one of them was backed by the West because it was serving Western interests. And no, we don't have the luxury as people who are fighting an anti-colonial.
So can I finish the point before?
Domination and totalitarianism, because this is nonsense. The fact of the matter is, the people that support the West do not differentiate between do not totalitarianly exclusively negate and reject totalitarian and authoritarian governments. When it suits their interest, they support them. Yes, and this argument only comes up when those who are able and challenging that power amass enough power to challenge it effectively. I make no apology for our ancestors who stood up and challenged the authoritarian nature of colonialism. Colonialism was an authoritarian regime that was imposed upon African people, and Africans had to develop the authority to challenge it. And there was no other way to do it other than militarily in a significant number of instances, and we make no apology for these things. Yeah, so no, it's not an issue of just blanket totalitarian power and centralized and rare. Because when it suit them people there, yeah. If I was on here again talking about the magnificence of Ronald Reagan, who was an authoritarian president of America, you are a supporter of Donald Trump, who's an authoritarian president. So the issue is not authoritarianism. The issue is interests and whose interests power is serving. That is it.
All right. So I would just implore.
One way,
you know what I'm talking.
One way to defend is to run interference. Yeah, so we don't come and say, because you can't come on ShakaRa's platform, on gotkushTV, yeah, the Pan-African platform, and mount an open defense of Henry Kissinger and Western Empire. So what we do is just try and muddy the waters, you know. The revolutionary forces, the most revolutionary forces in what's it called? Angola at the time was the MPLA. So let's muddy the waters and throw some mud on the MPLA. And because they were supported by Castro and America is against Castro, let's make Fidel Castro the issue. Yes, centralized Fidel Castro in the thing. Yeah, and that allows us to divert the conversation away from an analysis of how American and Western power and its hegemony, the dominant power in the world today, actually acts, and get into a flowery, specific conversation about power in broad terms. And then tomorrow we're gonna vote for Donald Trump, and we're gonna support and then tell the people them how good Ronald Reagan was, and tell the people them how what a magnificent force Pinochet was in Chile, even though he ran a murderous regime. Yeah, we're gonna support all of these things, and then come on the platform and talk about MPLA, a blow.
All right, so I will just implore. Hold on. I will just implore people to go and read the book that are presented to see if that is to say if that. Hold on, Shaka. Hold on. Me know say you're upset because me kind of shake up the car a little bit. Me know, but calm down. Just read. Hold on. Pardon?
I mean, I ask you to tell the people them the book and the author of the book. What wrong with that?
I just sourced the book. I just gave you a picture of the book. It's a book written by socialists during that time about that.
What is the title of the book and the author, my brother? The title and the author.
The title is Angola, the Hidden History of Washington's War. All right? So anybody can read that book. Anybody can read that book and make up your mind if that book is a diversion or supporting American imperialism. All right? And that's one. Number two, I never say I supported Trump. I've never supported Trump. I say I support policies. I don't support politicians. And that's why I'm very critical of Trump's protectionist policies and Amos Wilson's protectionist policies. I've never told you that I supported Trump. That's just you trying to throw mud to discredit me and to probably discredit the book that I sourced.
By the way, I asked you live if you are a supporter of Trump. You confirmed that you are a supporter of Trump, and I also confirmed whether you are.
Did I say I supported policies, not politicians?
You did not. I asked you.
All right, no man. That's all right.
I even used the word. I even used the term Trumpist. And I also confirmed that you are not necessarily Trump in the past tense, but you are a supporter of Trump 2024. Yeah. And so I'm not speaking from.
Did I say I support his economic policies? Did I say that?
Sorry.
Did I say that?
I'm simply clarifying. I never said that you.
Okay.
I never said that you support.
Okay, good.
What I said was
that's what I'm saying. I don't support.
And he is an authoritarian president. He is not only an authoritarian president, he's an authoritarian president that promotes.
Like which policy? Name a policy that's authoritarian. Name one policy that's authoritarian.
When he ramped up, what's it called? The trade war with China. He also came to power on the back of a significant. On the back of a significant campaign against.
So trade war is authoritarian. I agree. I agree with that.
Right? What's it called? He also came to power on the back of a significant anti-immigrant sensibility that was being promoted by certain forces within America.
Anti-immigrant or anti-illegal?
Beyond that, just even his style, is authoritarian.
No, man, I don't know style. I talk about policies. I don't talk about personality. Tell me about policy.
Had discussions before in which the issue of Chile comes up, and one has openly said that Pinochet, you've openly stated your support of Pinochet, even, right? So and it don't get much more.
Of course, Pinochet over Allende, because Allende was authoritarian. Allende was authoritarian.
Please, this is ridiculous.
Sorry, did you just say you supported Pinochet? And what all those citizens who went missing?
Over same thing with Allende. Allende also had terrorist groups killing people who were opposed to his regime. You understand? So don't come to me. Don't come to me. Picking aside, picking.
First and foremost,
let me finish.
First and foremost, Allende was democratically elected by the people.
So was Hitler.
No, Hitler
So was
wasn't
Hitler.
elected. Hitler was put into power by
Yes.
Hindenburg. He wasn't elected.
Yes, he
He wasn't
no
elected
man,
as
he
the
was
ruler of
anyway. All right. Yeah, yes, he was. Anybody can research the
No,
history.
he wasn't.
He was
This is the point
elected. Come
power
on.
by Hindenburg.
The
Hindenburg put him in
difference
power.
between the difference here, getting back to the actual
And
subject,
was Eric Gary elected? Was
the
Eric
difference
Gary elected?
is
All right,
who
so
was acting
fine.
in their interest. Sorry, the difference here is not who's authoritarian and not
And
and
Paul
not authoritarian.
Kagame was elected also. So I mean,
The
two
issue
can
here
play this
is
game.
the issue here, but I'm not playing the game because my standard is very
Yeah,
clear.
because you want to bring up Trump and Pinochet. You want to bring up Trump and Pinochet, even though me tell you say his policies, not politician I
The
support.
subject matter, because of the fact that we are discussing Kissinger and white men who support Western Empire and the extent to which they are
What about white men like Castro?
They are characterized as war criminals and charged with war crimes. Castro is one of the most character assassinated politicians in the Western world. He has no standing in the Western world. And even
More than Pinochet? More than Pinochet?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Pinochet
Okay.
does not have the
Okay.
I would argue that none of the
Really?
people
So
listening.
why wasn't he
I would
indicted?
argue that many people-
Why
I would
wasn't
argue that
Castro
many people-
indicted like Pinochet? Even though Pinochet stepped down and Castro never stepped down
Pinochet was
from
never indicted.
dictatorship.
Pinochet was never indicted.
Exactly.
Yes, he was in Spain. When he went to Spain, he was indicted.
They
Okay,
brought
fine.
up
All right.
charges- They brought
Hold on,
charges
hold on.
up against him, but they were
Exactly.
never.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was charges brought up against Castro?
I'm not going
No,
down
they
that
only
road.
tried to assassinate.
Was
Charles.
Castro brought up charges?
I am not going down that road because Coffee well
Okay.
knows the history. And again, it's just trying to muddy the waters. I am sure that enough people even listen to the stream. I've even never heard the name Pinochet before. And if they have, know very little about him. The world knows the name Fidel Castro. But we were not even discussing Fidel Castro today. Fidel Castro has no standing in stature, in the popularity, yes, among the people them that control the global geopolitical order. When Castro died, the international media, yes, ran stories about him, characterizing him as a brutal dictator. There were no celebrations and dinners of honor and all kind of different things. All right.
But the international media also characterized Pinochet as a brutal dictator.
There has been. This guy, there has been. Yes. And
no, even Kissinger them talk about complicated legacy.
oh yes, complicated. Yes.
Yeah, it's true. You use euphemism like that.
And you've made the point that I already made, right? Complicated, controversial. Yeah. These are the
No, I'm
comments
saying that the media, the mainstream media says that. They didn't celebrate him like what you're intimating.
Yeah. So
which is a minor point still.
It's not even. So we see the extent.
Anyway, the point you might try to make is that
by the way,
authoritarian, centralized.
Can we clarify this? By the way, this piece of information here, Pinochet, the coup that brought Pinochet to power, that was backed by Kissinger, supported by Nixon, Ford, Reagan, etc. Yeah, Pinochet was in power from 1973, yes, to 1990. I'm forgetting the year, but
I think in the early 90s.
Right, the entire time that he was in power, he was backed by America, yes, and tens of thousands of people, yes, were killed under his regime. Thousands more, we don't even know what happened to them. Them just disappear. Yes, them just disappear off of the face of the earth. And that's just one nation during this period. We haven't even spoken about the same group of people and their machinations in Argentina yet. whilst they're parading all over the world as the land of the free and the home of the brave, savers and
Left wing kill their enemies. Left wing governments, left wing dictatorships in Latin America kill their enemies.
And human rights. This is again. See, we see deflections again. These people
No, if you want to say one side good and one side bad, then it's legitimate to ask if the other side do bad things too.
So again, but if I was here discussing the brutality of Castro, and by the way, we're not even talking about left wing governments. We're even just talking about left wing organization. Yeah, and you notice now, I never even said
that's why I'm saying instead of looking at left wing.
And you notice I never said anything about left wing. I never put anything about right wing.
Come on, man, it's implicit. It's implicit.
Excuse me. Implicit or Argentina. What I said was that these people backed brutal dictators that massacred hundreds of thousands of people over a period of time.
Yes, MPLA do that too.
Okay. So the fact of the matter is this. Yes, we're talking about intervention in nations whereby these people
Mengistu do that too.
And the fact that a global hegemonic power is sustained based upon these contradictions. Yeah, there is no socialist power, there is no leftist power that governs the International Criminal Court. Because if there was,
really?
Yes.
So really?
We're discussing power as it actually exists in today's world. Yes, the power that as it actually exists in today's world is the power that supports and funds and is geared towards the interests of Western imperialist nations. And that we are dealing with. And one of their died recently, and so we are using the opportunity to discuss and explore and analyze how them operate. And it seems some people have a problem with this. I wonder why.
And if you want to look at
them now go pan. I was watching today the Ronald Reagan Institute, yeah, and they're having a discussion about global issues and who you go
on Ronald Reagan, no Jesus.
And how I said the Ronald Reagan Institute, it still exists. Yes, it's an institute that exists to this day. Okay, and they had a meeting, and I'll take you in piece of the meeting. And them I talk about who dangerous round your son, who dangerous round this so, and where me nah see, no, yeah, no, yeah. I go up and feed them thing. I say, well, hold on, people them. Ronald Reagan is responsible for the murders of how much and rah. Oh, you're not talking about them people and and for an institute name after a mass murderer. And I want to talk about what going in Iran and Afghanistan and China and Russia.
Do you know the famous quote that the famous do you know the famous
challenge, brother? When please engage that action. The same argument that you're bringing me right about now. Go on the channels, yeah, of Candace Owens, yeah, and where your brethren name again? What's the next brethren, man? The black brethren, that went on the panel.
FD signifier.
No,
Larry Elder,
Jared Ball,
Larry Elder, and
Don Lemon.
That's not who I was thinking of though. Not Larry Elder, the younger one.
Coleman Hughes,
Lamont Hill. Who?
Yeah.
Who you talking?
Coleman Hughes. Yeah.
Jesus.
Them people there. Go pan for them thing when they might extol the virtues of American empire and how America is the bastion of freedom and democracy and human rights and all of these. Go pan for them platform and tell them say no. What you know what talk is foolishness. America is an authoritarian empire, as evidenced by the fact that
I've never said America is an authoritarian.
So I'm asking you to go on their platforms right now, the all of them. Yeah, you're gonna find eulogizing, yeah, and mitigating, and what name? Kissinger. Yeah, we're gonna find people who are doing this now. Go on their platform.
I would be very surprised if they do it openly. I don't think
people are eulogizing and celebrating Kissinger all over the place right here now. Me say, ono figure up on feed them platform. Yes.
So why? So is Ronnie run me off? Ronnie run me off?
Not necessarily, but you feel free to leave.
Ronnie run me off?
Go up and fill them platform.
I apologize for upsetting you so much. Like I look like say you really. It look like say the information burn you.
If I was up there, you would know. Go up and fill them platform.
Yes. Why? Me wouldn't want to know, but if you're not upset, no, me wouldn't want to see when you really upset.
Puppy. I'm a passionate African. If you can't handle the passionate African fire, you're free to leave the platform.
No, but basically you tell me for go. You tell me you run me off for your program.
If you can't handle the thing, then feel free to come off of the platform. A simple thing. All right. Go and fill them platform and tell them say them not to celebrate and mitigate and justify and what the thing go? Find euphemism. Yes? Find euphemism for the criminal that is Henry Kissinger. And the reality is they laud the exploits of a Kissinger in his death as a sign of the extent to which they intend to continue his agenda. Because Kissinger's agenda is not Kissinger's agenda. Kissinger's agenda is the Western imperialist agenda that currently dominates global geopolitics and African ascendancy in today's world. I eat that, and that we need to know. And all of this deflection is designed to divert us from having a proper analysis, yes, of this power structure and how it operates. Because without a proper analysis, we will never develop the necessary organization to challenge them and work on our own behalf.
I think the proper analysis is, in the long term, should be a move away from governments and authoritarianism to a more anarchistic type of formations among the people. Voluntary formations around the people, where politicians and bureaucrats bossing about everybody. Because what Cuban government, Angolan government, and the American governments have in common is inherent authoritarianism and inherent need to control other people. And that is, to me, that's anti-liberation, anti-revolutionary. So, I mean, the ultimate goal, the idea that I think we all should be working towards is anarchy and not government and centralized government.
So why aren't you following liberalism then?
I don't understand the question.
Liberalism is about individual liberty. It wants less government control on property, on rights. So I'm curious
He's
why
certified as a liberal, by the way, Larry.
Oh, he does. Okay, so because the anarchist thing,
in the tradition of Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman.
Oh, okay, the neoliberals. Got it. All right.
No, liberalism and neoliberalism is two different things. I mean that's a no-brainer. One says neo meaning new. I mean that's like a no-brainer. That's like a no-brainer.
He vacillates between classical liberalism and neoliberalism.
I never said anything about neoliberalism. I never said anything about neoliberalism.
Are you a Reagan supporter? I thought you were a Reagan supporter. Maybe I misheard.
I
just told Shaka that I don't support politicians, I support policies.
Do you support Reagan policies?
So for instance, when Garvey at the time implored black people to support FDR, was it because he wanted to support a politician, or was it because he thought those policies at that time would have been in the interest of black people?
I think comparing yourself to Marcus Garvey.
Hold on, one at a time, please. One at a time. Come again.
The policies are part of the politician. They're one and the same. You can't separate them. The policies come from the politician.
No, they're not, because Garvey would not have wanted racist exclusion. Garvey.
There's
Oh,
a difference between strategic support of a politician and the backing of the ideology of the politician.
Ooh, okay. Strategic support. Good.
Oh yeah. Because voting. So, for example, this is the context in which Papa Garvey, and what you said is not exactly correct, but let's go down this road. Yeah?
What did I say that wasn't exactly correct?
Me, thank you. I'll Garvey was the head of an organization called the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Its ultimate goal was African liberation. Yes, within the context of African nationhood, as in having a nation of our own through which we exercise power. It also, within that auspices, had what was called Negro political unions that were designed to advocate on behalf of the policies, of policies that were beneficial in a particular jurisdiction. Garvey did not advocate the Democratic
Thank you very
Party
much, Shaka.
or the Republican Party.
Neither do I.
Garvey did not advocate the ideology of any of these political leaders. All right. And so
what is the ideology of Trump?
We know what is taking place.
What's the ideology of Trump?
We know what is taking place.
Yeah.
Attacks, for example, anti-colonial movements and protects, for example, American presidents in their intrigue against African leaders who are fighting colonialism. We know what that means. Garvey would
What's the ideology of Trump?
We know when somebody attacks an Nkrumah and tries to replace Nkrumah with Milton Friedman, we know that is not simply about a policy here and there, this specific policy and a particular kind of game.
Yeah, it's different ideas. Yeah, so what?
We're talking about an ideology, okay? So politics and voting.
So what is the ideology of Trump?
Representative of an ideology. So we are not just talking about voting,
oh boy, God.
Supporting a president or a politician here and there. We're talking.
What is the ideology of Trump?
Western imperialism. We're talking about the ideology, okay? The ideology at play in a particular.
What's the ideology of Trump?
Western imperialism. White supremacy and Western imperialism.
Okay. I don't support Western imperialism and white supremacy.
Whatever, but you. But you are a disciple of all of those and advocate.
Oh, come on, man. You're stretching the thing. Okay, all right.
When one comes on and promotes Milton Friedman's a Western imperialist. When one comes up on and promotes Adam Smith is
Friedman or his ideas about economics. Friedman supported Israel and I don't support Israel. So what are you trying to say?
Both.
But it can't be both, because I just tell you, I don't support all the ideas of Friedman. I don't support all the ideas of Trump. So what are you trying to? You're trying to
quote yourself. It's implicit, and you know what I'm saying. But you're going
to what?
It's good. I said to quote you. It's implicit, and you know what.
It's implicit. Okay, you can mind read me. All right, good. Well, I can mind read you. You support Castro. You support Castro. Even though Castro's helped MPLA slaughter whole heap of Angolans just because them rise up against them own party.
It's not mind reading. We've had conversations before, so I get it. You know, you can't come because the record.
You complain about Mobutu killing Lumumba, but you never once talk about Neto killing Alves.
The record of Kissinger is so stark and blatant, that you can't.
The record of MPLA also is also stark and bloody and blatant.
And this is the point I'm trying to make, right? So, and this, by the way, this is the thing. So when for example Patrice Lumumba, comes to power and is seeking, is voted into power, and is trying to develop the anti-colonial movement, through his development of Congo, and we have Western propaganda that is designed to justify his assassination. When one comes on, and promotes the propaganda that was used to assassinate Patrice Lumumba, we know where that's coming from. Yeah, we don't have to ask questions. I mean, I'm not even in the mood to act like it
What
is
about
not.
the propaganda that support MPLA and its killing of its own people?
But again, what we are doing here
We
is
know where that coming from too. So again, two can play this game. If you want to go down this like a petty game,
what we are doing here is obfuscating the issue, because the conversation was about a war criminal named Henry Kissinger and his actions on behalf of American empire. And one wants to compare and make a force equivalence between the MPLA, who are waging an anti-colonial fight against Portuguese colonizers and against people in their own ranks who were willing to support apartheid South Africa and take
that's just
blood money from America to do so. That is the point. But because now we can't defend openly the American imperialist agenda, we have to act like there's an equivocation, yes, between the MPLA at this moment. And as I said yesterday, the MPLA has its contradictions, and those contradictions became very, very stark as it began to develop into the 90s and so on and so forth, right? But this is not a conversation detailing the exploits of the MPLA. We were looking at how Western empire operates. Within the context of genuine African liberation fights. And I tell you this, brothers and sisters, within every African liberation movement, you are going to find contradictions because people are human. But none of the contradictions among an African liberation movement like the MPLA are a justification for the machinations of white imperialist power among us and those who betray the interests of our people in the interest of Western empire. And because of the fact that Western empire is the dominant hegemony in today's world, the force equivocation is designed implicitly and explicitly to give legitimacy to the actions of Western empire. So you can't talk about America because what facilitated Castro allowing the troops to come. And as I said yesterday, I haven't made this point today. Let me make it right now. The majority of the troops that came from Cuba are Africans who acknowledged and recognized their connection to the people of Angola and Central Africa, because the majority of them are descendants of said people. Castro said that himself, and so wanted to support the anti-apartheid movement, and were incensed by the fact that these apartheid racist white people had sent, mercenaries, paid mercenaries to Angola. And if what had happened was nothing, basically the mercenaries ran over the MPLA at that time, and UNITA came to power, you'll be hearing about how much Angola was a bastion of democracy, in today's world. And the same thing them doing Mobutu. So now we're gonna condemn Pierre Molele and the Simba Rebellion for rising up in arms against Mobutu, because they killed people in the defense of a revolution in progress. And we're going to equivocate between them and Mobutu. We're going to condemn, do you condemn the Mama? We're going to condemn Mukami Kimati and Mama Injeri. And Dedan Kimati for picking up arms to kill the white colonizer and act as though there's no difference between the white people that were killing Africans in Kenya and the Africans who picked up arms to fight the colonial enemy and those among the Africans who are supporting. We're gonna provide justification, yes, for the America's invasion, unprovoked invasion of Grenada in 1983 on the basis of the fact that Grenada was friendly with Castro and politics is big people business.
All right, since you're throwing the word, let me come in now.
Hold on. Come here, wrap up the show. I'm not take no more comment. Yeah, we're gonna justify these things because what that does is creates a forced equivocation that, based upon the present geopolitical power dynamics, lends legitimacy to the neo-colonizer. That's what that does. Yes, and that's all that's taking place right here. Yeah, that is all that is taking place right here. And as you can tell, brothers, today I don't have much patience for it. Me not care. Yeah, I know what is going on, and the fact, yes, you see me, you know, I don't play with the lives of African people. Yes, Henry Kissinger is a mass murderer of not just African people's lives, but I'm primarily concerned with the lives of African people, especially when those Africans rise up and challenge imperialist authority. And so, yes, I am charging that our brothers' contributions this evening are mischievous and designed to provide mitigation and legitimacy for white Western imperialist power. Yeah. No doubt about that. Yeah. So again, evidence, yeah. Right? Communists. Yeah. So we're gonna use again the white Western imperialist language, talking points, and characterization to define my defense of African liberation forces. So we know where this comes from. This is what I'm trying to say, Robert. We're not fit. You know what I'm saying? Where's the comment that says, if we're going to make the equivocation, yeah? All right. If we're going to make the where's the equivocation that says capitalists always get upset when their propaganda is challenged? If the lesson is authoritarianism and how centralized governments and so on and so, where is the analysis from our brother that uses the term capitalist in place of the term communist? Instead, we are using the capitalist talking point to characterize the African. You see me? All right, Imhotep. Go on through. Oh, Larry, you're gone. Go on through. Imhotep. Make a comment.
All right. Thank you. I kind of just wanted to clarify something for the audience and hopefully for Brother Coffee as well. That the appellation war criminal, the accusation of a party or a person having committed a war crime, is not a moral judgment. It is a legal judgment. Therefore, the idea of, number one, us putting people into good and bad guys doesn't apply, because that's not what the appellation war criminal is. An example of this is the ongoing conflict in Palestine. Both parties in a conflict can commit war crimes, and it doesn't mean that one is good and one is bad. If somebody is a war criminal, applying the appellation war criminal to them is not, as I said, a moral judgment. It doesn't require somebody else, the person who they're doing it to have been morally correct or to have been totally innocent or anything like that. It simply means the person who did it is a war criminal. That's it.
Agreed, my brother. And the point that we were making today, which was being obfuscated and deflected from, is not the fact that there are not war criminals on both sides of the conflict. It's the fact that there are some war criminals who are brought to justice and some who are not. And when I talk about, the people them are pursued and they escape. Yeah, no, we are talking about the fact that there are some who are called war criminals, characterized as war criminals, and every attempt is made to bring them to justice. Yes. Now notice this here. Carlos Moore. Yes, Carlos Moore was a citizen of Angola. Carlos Moore himself contributed to the liberation fight in Angola, not to the civil war. Yes. Some of those Africans from Cuba who came, yes, to Angola to fight were friends of Carlos Moore. Carlos Moore is clear that Savimbi, who was once his friend, and Savimbi was his friend when Savimbi was an open Marxist, yes, became a right-wing agent of the CIA. Yeah? Carlos Moore is clear about these things. Carlos Moore is also clear about the fact that there is racism in Cuba and that the whites in Cuba do not allow the Africans to express and organize on the basis of their Africanness. And some have been killed in that regard. But Carlos Moore is making that analysis in defense of the interests of African people in Angola, in Cuba, in Senegal, where he lived with Sheikh Anta Diop for a period of time, and anywhere else in the world. Carlos Moore is not making that analysis on behalf of the American government and its interest. Carlos Moore is a long-standing Pan-Africanist who condemns selloutery in the interest of serving neocolonial forces and governments and corporations and so on and so forth. You can't bring Carlos Moore to me. Yeah, you can't bring Carlos Moore to me. All right. And the funny thing is, the anti-Carlos Moore factions in Cuban society tried to use his previous relationship with Savimbi against him later on in life when he had no relationship to Savimbi. Yes, because of the switches in his politics. So we know who Carlos Moore was defending. Carlos Moore's ideology and his intentionality was clear. And that we are dealing with today. And so today we are analyzing a war criminal by the name of Kissinger and his service on behalf of white supremacist Western Empire. And we're doing so with our apology. And we're now going to try and muddy the water at all. Oh, sorry, family. I forgot. I missed out the super chats. Bigging up Social Blade. Big up ShakaRa. Kissinger was the brain behind most wars. Rest in hell. And Lee Clinton said, "Brethren, stop interrupting." Much appreciated. Thank you for your super chats, my brothers or sisters. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. And yeah, brothers and sisters, feel free to do the same. I'm going to wrap up the show now. Yeah, so give tax for coming through. Much appreciated. Bigging up to Ellery as well. You dropped off, but I hope I thank you for your contribution to the conversation as well. Much appreciated. I hope the show was informative to brothers and sisters. Yeah. So for those who tuned in late, what we did was we engaged in an analysis. Yeah. And this is if you tuned in later on and heard the ridiculous conversation that was just taking place, this might assist you as to why I shut it down. We were engaging in an analysis from a member of the International Commission of Jurists. Yeah, they deal with international law, human rights law, as defined by institutions such as the UN, the International Criminal Court, etc., etc., etc. To look at the extent to which the legacy of Henry Kissinger stands as a war crime, not just in the emotions of people's mind who know a bit of history, but according to the statutes, yes, of these institutions. And so the point was to look at the extent to which Kissinger is a war criminal by the standard, yes, of the war criminal, i.e., America, Britain, the West in general, who are the nations who stand at the helm of instituting and imposing these laws on the rest of the world. Yes. And so we looked at 3 different case studies. One was Cambodia, one was Pakistan and Bangladesh, and one was Timor. Yeah. And in all 3 instances, Kissinger, particularly, his actions resulted in the death of hundreds of thousands of people, if you view it all collectively. And so there is no doubt that by these standards, he is a war criminal. Yet in the wake of his death, he has been celebrated, heralded. There was the article began with the fact that the American elite, when he turned 100 in May, hosted a dinner, you know what I'm saying, and all kind of different thing. Yeah. And so we are analyzing this in the context of understanding how global power works in today's world. Yes. Kissinger was not charged, and people like him are not charged. Bush Senior, Bush Junior, Trump, Reagan, Obama, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Margaret Thatcher, etc., 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 are not charged with war crimes because they represent the power of the dominant global hegemony in today's world. And so they set a standard for what it means to be a war criminal that they can impose but never be subject to. Why is that important for us as African people? Because we are at a stage whereby it is highly likely, and I shouldn't even say highly likely, it is a fact of African life at the moment that our resistance to that power structure that Henry Kissinger represented so well involves armed resistance. And the same powers that legitimize the actions of Henry Kissinger are the same powers that are right now involved in the destabilization of the Congo and the mass murdering that is taking place in the Congo, that are involved in the massive resource extraction that continues in places like South Africa, that are involved in the destabilization of places like Sudan and Ethiopia, that are involved in Venezuela, Guyana, Haiti, those interests that are involved in Antigua and Barbuda, another subject for another time. And I emphasized earlier that there's a distinct relationship between Western corporations, in this instance, particularly military, and Western governments. There is no distinction to be made between Western power, imperialist power, as it relates to the political and the economic. Centralized power is not just based in governments. Centralized power is based in banks. Centralized power is based in corporations. Centralized power is based in multinational and transnational organizations. Central power is based in NGOs and charities. And what makes the centralization of that power effective is that they all act in the interest and towards the maintenance of Western imperialist power. So when anybody attempts to get us to an ideological position whereby we're critical of Western governments, but totally uncritical of Western corporations, no, that is promotion Western imperialism and neocolonialism. Yes, because the people that promote these policies not only know that all of those structures work in concert, they are involved in ensuring that that takes place. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. When Kissinger supported the overthrow of Salvador Allende in Chile and the coming to power of Pinochet, one of the reasons that they knew exactly what was going on is because they had the CIA operating in the country, but they also had a group of people called the Chicago Boys, headed by Milton Friedman, one of the world's top economists, and arguably the most consequential economist of the last 50 years. Let's give it 50 years. Yeah, there are some that were as consequential as him prior to the last 50 years. Yeah. So the economic interests and the corporations that were making money off of Pinochet's regime are no different to the government, not a separate institution, a distinct establishment. Yes, when America invaded Haiti in the 19 teens, militarily, and occupied the place for 20 years, the American government benefited through its corporations. Through its corporations. Yes, and they will always find justification. Yes, they will always find justification. Because you will always find sellouts among African people. Yeah. And so because UNITA in Angola was willing to sanction, the apartheid regime, that they became a friend of America, because America and Britain at the time were friends of the apartheid regime, and so they needed support. The MPLA were not working towards the interest of America and Britain at that time. And the other thing is, you don't even always have to be a revolutionary, Yeah. Silviano Olympio in Togo, well, not big time revolutionary. Him just said, well, you know what? We have to stop allow France for print the money, We have to start print we own a currency. Got rid of him straight, no long thing. Yeah. Anyway, brothers and sisters, I talk long enough. So I hope ones and ones got something from the show. I don't normally use the mute button, but I'm learning that sometimes to control the conversation, it has to happen. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I never employ the mute button. But yeah, you know, we have to maintain all at the same time. And again, certain sensibilities we don't have to entertain. We are Pan-Africanists. And we're dealing with African liberation. And we're clear about that. All right? We're clear about that. I am going to close because Marcus Garvey was mentioned. Yeah, with some word sounds of Marcus Garvey. And the word sounds that I'm going to read concern our self-reliance and nationhood as African people. Yeah, give me a second. I'm just trying to find the word sound because I can quote this off my head, but I want to make sure I get it exactly correct. You know, every word is important. All right, here we go. Hapagavi says, no race is free until it has a strong nation of its own system of government, and its own order of society. Never give up this idea. Never be satisfied to always live under the government of other people, because you will always be at their mercy. Visualize for yourself and your children and generations unborn your own kings, emperors, president, your own government officials and administrators who look like you. We are determined to solve our own problems by redeeming our motherland, Africa, from the hands of alien exploiters and found there a government, a nation of our own, strong enough to lend protection to the members of our race scattered all over the world and to compel the respect of the nations and races of the earth. Such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Hail to the power of the word. Tendai Mwale, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Muzimu Mukuru, give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what? Centeredness. So right at this moment, when we are beginning to coalesce and to develop a concept of African identity and Afrocentrism, we are all now suddenly in a what? Identity crisis. Is the identity crisis really there, or is what going on an attempt to do what? Create an identity crisis? Because these people are well aware of what a full and wholesome identity will do to them. And they are aware that an African-centered identity represents the end of white power and of white oppression. That's why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what?